Rosenthal, editor-in-chief of the Ring magazine. And Michael, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but once again, we've had a huge pay-per-view boxing event that has ended in controversy. Just this past Saturday at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Manny Pacquiao and Juan Manuel Marquez engaged in their anticipated third fight. This one, just like the other two, ended in a decision, an unpopular decision. Now, on the good side, we actually got a competitive fight. Juan Manuel Marquez surprised everybody. It was not the beatdown most hardcore fans and boxing writers and pundits had anticipated. It was a competitive fight from the first round through the final round, and many observers among the ringside press and those watching the HBO pay-per-view broadcast and the various international telecasts believe that Juan Manuel Marquez pulled off a monumental upset. My question to you is, and I should say the official verdict of this fight was a majority decision for Manny Pacquiao, so those who thought Marquez won this fight handily were wrong, at least in terms of the official decision. My first question to you, do you believe it was a controversial outcome to this fight, and do you agree with the official decision?
I think 16-12 is a little bit outrageous. Basically, looking back on that fight, I think it was a very close fight that could have gone either way. I'll put it out there. I personally scored it, watching on TV, I should say, 115-113 for Pacquiao, but I could see it going 115-113 the other way. I just thought it was half the rounds were so difficult to score. I just didn't know what to do.
So one of those kind of swing bouts, a 7-5 fight, as we call it in boxing. There's like 3 close rounds. You can have this swing where it's either a draw or one guy wins by 2 points or the other guy wins by 2 points. I didn't agree with the official. I had it a draw, to be quite honest. Just so folks know, I scored the first fight between Pacquiao and Marquez a draw. I scored their rematch a draw. Wow. And here we go, their third fight. I had that a draw as well. I scored 6 rounds apiece for these guys. The only difference between this fight and their previous 2 fights was action, was sustained action, a level of intensity, and there were no knockdowns. So I think people are used to seeing Marquez not win a Pacquiao fight because of the knockdowns. Right. And here's a fight where he finishes the fight without having tasted canvas, and I think he surprised so many people. Maybe, and you give me your impressions, maybe he was given more benefit for what he did. Maybe he was given a little bit too much credit for those people who thought that he won handily, just because they thought that he was going to be overrun or thought that it wasn't going to be competitive.
That's an interesting take. I actually hadn't thought about that before. I think that people who had Marquez winning just thought that he landed the more eye-catching punches, and I agree with that. I just, again, watching from TV, I just thought Pacquiao landed more punches. I thought he was a little bit more active. I thought he landed more punches. Maybe Marquez landed more effective punches, but those I thought kind of balanced out, you know that kind of thing. But I also wonder whether it was different for the guys at ringside, because the polls that we saw, it seems like half of the guys had Marquez winning a pretty close fight, and amazingly so, half of them actually had it a draw.
Yeah, I've never seen that many draws among press row.
Which tells me it was a close fight that could have gone either way.
That's what I think.
But there's a lot of passion, especially on the Marquez side. Right. It was some kind of robbery. I think calling it a robbery is just wrong. I just don't think it was that.
Well, it's not fair to fights that actually are robberies. This wasn't Pernell Whitaker getting a draw against Julio Cesar Chavez. This wasn't Lennox Lewis getting a draw against Evander Holyfield in their first fight. This to me was a nip and tuck contest. I'd love to say nip and tuck battle, but it wasn't, and I don't think it will be if they have a 4th fight, for 2 reasons, Michael. And a lot of people pontificated on this, including Freddie Roach. People thought, well, maybe Marquez just has that style and know-how to trouble Manny Pacquiao every time the two step into the ring. He is the Joe Frazier or the Kenny Norton to Muhammad Ali. I would agree with that, but I also don't want to see a 4th fight because I wasn't terribly entertained by this 3rd fight. And I think the fact that they are so much heavier than they were when they fought in 2004 and 2008 and older, they've just slowed down to a point where it's never going to be that intense, heated barn burner that we got with their first 2 contests. And I'm a guy who likes action. So
Me too.
I'm against a 4th fight. What about you?
I'm definitely, well, I wouldn't say I'm against a 4th fight. I mean, he does probably deserve a 4th fight. If he wants it, it would be nice for Marquez to get a 4th fight. But I frankly, I thought the fight was kind of boring.
Really? That bad?
Yeah, I just thought it was just, we were just talking about it earlier. We just like, something happened. Somebody take charge. Land a big punch, something. It was just kind of the same thing. I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and it just never happened. And I just suspect that a 4th fight would be more of the same.
I agree. I don't think there's. I personally do not see a winner, a clear winner out of these 2 combatants over 36 rounds, and I don't think it would be any different over 48 rounds. I mean, I honestly think these guys could fight at middleweight in their mid-40s, and it would be the same thing. It would just be a lot slower and a lot less interesting. And I want faster and I want interesting. Now, what is interesting is where people think these fighters should be ranked after this. I mean, I've received emails saying, hey, make Marquez the #1 fighter pound for pound, because I thought that he beat the #1 pound for pound fighter. And I've even received emails saying, hey, how come Marquez is not ranked within the welterweights in the ring rankings, which is kind of an interesting question. Let's talk a little bit about the rankings. We went with maintaining Manny Pacquiao in the #1 position, and there was, I would say, a significant amount of debate about whether or not Floyd Mayweather should be upgraded from the #2 position to the #1 position, based primarily on the fact that he absolutely dominated Juan Manuel Marquez in September of 2009. And, you know, the man is undefeated and has pretty much won almost all of his 42 bouts handily. What went through your mind? I mean, did you give strong consideration personally to making Mayweather the #1 pound for pound fighter?
Yeah, actually, my gut reaction immediately after the fight was sort of leaning toward Mayweather because I was so disappointed in Pacquiao's performance, even though he won the fight. But, you know, after sort of thinking about it, and after we talked about it, we sort of made a collective decision.
And just so everyone knows, I wasn't twisting his arm.
No,
I just gave my opinion.
And we actually agreed to leave Pacquiao on the top because he did beat the #5 pound for pound guy.
Right, he didn't beat a chump.
Officially. I don't think you can compare the Mayweather-Marquez fight to the Pacquiao-Marquez fight. It's different styles, different strengths, different times, you know, that kind of thing. It's dangerous when you start doing that. I think Pacquiao's accomplished more than Mayweather has over the last several years.
That's what it comes down to me. Accomplishment and activity. If you go back in the last 3 years, with Pacquiao, he fights at least 2 times every year. And the problem with Mayweather is that there is at least a year between his outings.
Right.
I mean, when you allow 12 to 18 months to expire between your fights, it's hard for you to really gain momentum. And that's really what Pacquiao had, at least coming into this 3rd encounter with Marquez. He just had this tremendous momentum that he started with the Oscar de la Hoya fight in December of 2008.
Now, some people look at it differently than us. We like to look at accomplishments, like you have to earn the #1 spot.
Right.
Some people like to look at it as who would win if they fought head-to-head.
Who do they think is just the better overall boxer?
Right, and that's not our philosophy, but I understand that philosophy. It's legitimate. It's just a different way of looking at it. You know, personally, I think Mayweather would beat Pacquiao, especially after what I saw on Saturday, but I just don't think that's the only factor that you consider.
Right, and unlike, let's say, you know, during the 90s when you had Roy Jones Jr. and Oscar de la Hoya kind of battling it out for that #1 position. Well, these two were never going to be able to settle that argument in the ring. With Mayweather and with Pacquiao, we got 2 guys who are the #1 and #2 welterweights. They are in the same division. It can be settled in the ring, and that's the way it should be, which brings us to our last question. Is this fight going to happen? What do you think happens next with Manny Pacquiao?
It doesn't seem like Bob Arum, Pacquiao's promoter, is really that interested at this very moment in that fight happening.
Right.
But I got to think that that's option. It's a real option, obviously, for obvious reasons. There's a lot of money to be made. Again, maybe I'm overly optimistic. Maybe I'm dreaming. I still think that fight's going to happen. I just think there's too much money to be had for it not to happen. Pacquiao's probably hungrier than ever right now to prove himself after this fight. Imagine what how he would be perceived if he could somehow beat Mayweather, which I don't think would happen.
Yeah, I say I don't rule it out. I don't want to get into a whole debate of who's going to win the fight because, hey, man, they got to make the fight first. I'm leaning towards the fight not happening, but I hope you're right as the optimist because we need optimism in boxing. But in many ways, the fight became more interesting to me. I mean, I think Pacquiao would be a pretty big underdog going into this fight. Now, he's not in my eye. I think he is a slight underdog based on this past performance. But I don't think Mayweather and Marquez are the same fighter, just style-wise.
I can say this, we don't want to get too much into that fight.
Absolutely.
But I think that Pacquiao would do much better against Mayweather than Marquez did. If people are thinking that Mayweather would struggle against Mayweather like Marquez did, I think they're wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's hope this fight happens. I think this is going to be one of the bigger storylines during the first part of 2012. And when you see us again, we will be looking at the final month of 2011, the month of December, and I hope it's a good one. Until then, I'm Doug Fisher.
I'm Michael Rosenthal.
And we'll see you guys at the fights.